I've seen the value of money firsthand, and even though I don't really desire it, I definitely don't want to work my whole life. So I got to figure out how to make money fast because all I really want to do is travel with my girlfriend, and the faster I can accomplish that, the better. So naturally, I had to make a plan and, of course, make a video about it. I'm going to try my best to make this an all encompassing video so you don't have to watch anything else. But with that being said, let's get into phase one. So, phase one, you need to choose something. You can't do anything if you don't have anything to do. Holy shit, I'm a genius, aren't I? But for real, you need to pick something and stick with it for at least 2 to 3 years. For me, it was real estate. I got my license, and as I've come to find out, it is vastly more difficult and way more stressful than I imagined. And to be honest, even though I've just started, there are some things that have me questioning my longevity. I've seen busy agents and they are always on the phone. I don't want to be on call. When I'm off, I want to be off. I want to be able to hang with my family and my friends. I also don't know if I like the idea of being a walking target. In this business, people are very sue crazy, and I have to constantly watch practically everything that I say and do. I literally have to have my broker okay things before I say them or post them, like on Facebook or Instagram. I'll send her screenshots of what I want to say, and then she kind of like picks it apart and is like, okay, change this, do this. And even when I text people sometimes, I have to have her okay things because you have to be very, very careful. But even with that, I'm going to stick it through for a couple years at the very least and just see where it takes me because there's a lot of potential money with this job. I swear like half the people at the office are millionaires. And it's the same for a lot of other career paths. Some jobs have steep learning curves. Think about air traffic controllers. Holy shit, I can't even imagine what it's like to be one of those. But with that comes the ability to change your entire life for the better. You don't want to cut that off too early. Of course, you may end up realizing that it truly isn't for you, which is totally fine, but you need to at least give it a wholehearted effort before you give up. It may take a couple of years, and that's totally fine. You could spend 20 years going from ages 20 to 40 looking through 10 different jobs, and if you finally find something by the time you're 40, that doesn't mean you're behind anybody. If anything, you're probably ahead because you actually found something that you enjoy, you genuinely enjoy, which most people don't have that luxury. And if you really like what you're doing, you'll probably want to get good at it, which will most likely result in you making more money, which is a perfect segue to phase two. You found your path. Now you have to get good at it. Look, I know these first two phases sound like common sense, but trust me, it's the foundation to our framework and they're 100% true. I still have a lot to learn as a realtor and I can see it and feel it every single day. When I'm in the office, there are things people talk about on a daily basis that go over my head, and I think this shows a bit in my clientele. I've only sold one house in the past several months of me doing this, which actually just happened, by the way. I'm super psyched about that. But granted, some of that is of course because I'm new and a lot of people don't really know me, but trust me, if I had a deep knowledge and understanding of everything that was going on and was really on the ball, people would notice. There's actually another agent in my office, we'll call him T. He's about a year older than I am, and he's been doing real estate for a few months longer than me. I needed to get some electrical work done on the house that I was selling, and he sent me this electrician's contact information. And whenever I went to go meet him, he actually had nothing but love and high praise for T. And he was telling me whenever T doesn't know something, he grinds and grinds until he figures it out. And overall, that makes him a better realtor. And not too long ago, he helped this woman buy a house. And afterward, she took time out of her day to personally post on Facebook about how knowledgeable and amazing he was as a realtor and just how easy to understand he made everything. And I can do all of the advertisement I want. I can give people cards, I can door knock, I can do social media, I can cold call, I can freaking buy mail letters, I can do everything under the sun. None of that will give me near the same returns as something like that. If I could get to that level, that alone would bring me more business. And I know with real estate, your returns are pretty good. You generally get out what you put in, and the sky's the freaking limit. But again, this extends past more than just my job. If people see how much of a freaking beast you are at what you do, people will take notice. That's kind of why any professional sport exists. And I wouldn't be surprised if all of this led to you making more money in your career. And real quick, I do want to say while phases 1 and 2 are our foundational pillars, and ideally you get those started before everything else, life isn't linear. So some of these phases for you might come before other phases, or you might be doing some of these phases while doing other ones. I just structured this video this way so it was a little bit easier to watch and easier to digest. And with that being said, we can get into phase 3. At this point, you should have some type of money money coming in, so invest that shit. I was just talking to my broker the other day, and he has somewhere around 40 rent houses with zero money in stocks. And so I asked him what he planned on doing when he retires, because I wouldn't want to have to manage 40 rent houses when I retire. That sounds freaking insane. And come to find out, he actually already has someone hired that manages all of it, so he actually doesn't need to do anything right now anyway. But he was like, man, there are so many things that you can do with real estate. You can cash out refi, which is what I talked about in my Burr video. You can actually use them as collateral and get loans from the bank that are completely tax-free. Of course, you have to pay it off, but you can just use the money that you're making from your tenants. This is how ultra wealthy people make money from their investments while avoiding capital gains tax. Of course, you can also hire someone and have your passive income, or you can become a handyman if you get bored. Those are the classic routes as well. But one thing he really values is cash flow, and he told me he's looking for about 50 grand a month, I assume in profit, before he retires. And he also mentioned that he really likes control. With stocks, you can invest in them, but you don't have any control of what the company does. Whereas real estate, you can control the modifications, you can control your rent prices, you can screen for tenants, all of that stuff. On top of the fact that it is probably the most tax advantaged and leverageable asset there is. So there's a lot of pros when it comes to real estate, and there are a lot of cons as well. I was talking to JP about this the other day, and he has a great video on his channel where he talks about his experience having a tenant and having real estate as an investment. But one thing that he was explaining to me was, yes, you can technically retire, but if you still have to answer calls, you got to go to your properties, you got to fix things, you haven't really left your 9 to 5. You just traded it for something else. And this something that you traded it for is a lot of freaking work. There is a lot of work that goes into real estate. I understand that. So much so that I don't even know if I'm fit for it, but it is damn good at making you money. There's a reason that every rich person owns real estate or wants to own more real estate. It's always going to have value. There's only a finite amount of it, and no piece of land is alike. Even if it looks like a dump, I know someone personally who's trying to invest in this plot of land right now in an area that just raised their property taxes by 40%. It's pretty much abandoned. I think it is abandoned. The property that's on it is in very bad condition. The owner hasn't paid their taxes in years, and yet this person is still trying to buy it cash right now. Earlier, I also mentioned how it's the most leverageable and tax-advantaged asset that there is, and a lot of that probably has to do with rich people writing in tax codes that make themselves richer. But the classic example that I always use is put $10,000 down on a $250,000 house. It appreciates at 4% a year. You're getting 100% return on your money every single year. It's freaking ridiculous. Here are several other ways that you can leverage in real estate. Seller financing is another huge way to leverage with real estate. You act as the lender, and honestly, you can get your deals done a little bit quicker because you're not waiting on the whole process from the lender, all the underwriting and everything like that. But you act as the bank. You get to choose your rates, and typically they're a lot higher than the current going mortgage rates. Right now, it's around 6.5%. I was talking to an agent that does a lot of seller financing. He told me the going rate for seller financing is like 10 to 12%. You can get a guaranteed 10 to 12% return on your money. That is crazy. And on top of that, if they default, you can take that property back and you can get all of that money completely for free. And I know that may not be the most morally right thing to do. I'm not here to tell you if it's morally right or wrong. I'm just telling you that this exists. And if you want to be a bit nicer, you don't want to take away the property that these people have been actively paying for and working for, you can just renegotiate the terms. You can give yourself an even higher rate and your returns are even better. And for anybody that may be in retirement or has a job like mine where you don't have a consistent paycheck, seller financing works great because it helps provide that stable income. It's a lot like having a tenant where you get consistent paychecks every month, but you pretty much don't have any of the drawbacks. At this point, I want to talk about taxes when it comes to real estate. And this is another thing JP mentioned in his video and he talked to me about. He hasn't experienced any type of tax strategy or loophole or tax advantage whatsoever when it comes to real estate. So maybe there is a little bit of a bias there. But one thing we talked about specifically was the 1031 exchange. And this is something that kind of confused the both of us because at face value, it doesn't really seem to make too much sense. What it is if you sell an investment property and you buy another one within a specific time frame, you can defer your taxes on the sale of your previous property until you sell the next one. And when you think about this for a second, you're like, what the hell? Why would you even do that? Because you're gonna have to pay the taxes anyway, so it doesn't even make sense. Well, for one, you can make the argument of time value of money, blah, blah, blah. But I specifically asked my broker what his thoughts on it were because, again, he has tons of rental properties. He does all types of real estate investments. He's been doing this for a long time. And so I asked, in your point of view, what is the main reason for doing a 1031 exchange if you still have to pay the taxes? Does it just have to do with time value of money? And he said, you keep buying bigger assets with more cash flow and never sell. When you die, whoever you leave it to doesn't have to recapture. So I said, damn, that's kind of crazy. so you can just legally avoid taxes altogether? 100%. And I know this is something he's passionate about because his ass never answers. And I texted him at 8:30 at night and he answered in like 5 minutes. I am a realtor. Maybe I have a bias, but if you're trying to get rich quick, real estate is probably the best way to go. On to phase 4. I know I've already talked about this, but at some point you got to get a hold of your tax situation. The tax code isn't made to take all of your money. It's to incentivize you to act a certain way. And yes, I know rich people pay less, generally speaking, than everyone else, but you can kind of emulate them and keep more money for yourself. I've talked about a lot of these things before, and I'm definitely not a tax expert, so I'm not going to go super in depth with these, but I'll fire off a lot of things that you can do. So by far the first easiest way that pretty much everyone can take advantage of the tax code, regardless of your income situation, whether you're a business owner or a W-2, is through tax advantaged accounts. So obviously Roth IRA, freaking GOAT, I've already talked about this. You can also open up an HSA for your medical bills. It's even more tax advantaged than the Roth. If you are a 1099 like me, you can open up self-employed accounts like the SEP IRA. Opening up accounts like these is the most easy and practical way for anybody to take advantage of the tax code. There's also all the real estate stuff that I was talking about earlier. That freaking 1031 exchange thing is ridiculous, and it may be a lot of work to have to keep reinvesting in properties every so often, however much you want to do it. But legally being able to avoid taxes is ridiculous, especially on investments like those. A house is a lot of money. Of course, there's the whole LLC S-Corp thing that I've been talking about nonstop on my channel. I actually just bought my LLC recently with my first commission check. I've been super excited about that. But I'm finally starting this process. And for those of you who don't know, if you form an LLC, you can register that as an S-Corp, and then you can give yourself a reasonable salary that gets taxed at 25, 30%, whatever. And then everything that you make outside of that is taxed as a distribution, which is like 10, 15%. So you can save a shit ton of money. I think these 4 foundational pillars will get you very far. Another bonus tip for you, if you can make people a lot of money, you will also make a lot of money in turn. They will definitely bless you up. There's an agent in my office that works with an investor. And as hard as it is to get clients as an agent and make consistent money, this agent has figured out a way past that, and he's made a good relationship with this investor. And this investor gives him deals every single month, like at least 2 to 3 deals. I mean, I don't know the exact specifics of it, but this guy has a consistent income, which is good because he came from an engineering job. He has a wife, he has kids, he has family that he has to worry about. But whenever you can make people money, they will in turn make you money. And this guy trusts him so much now that he gave him $800,000 while he left on a summer trip back to his home country. And this agent went to these foreclosure auctions by himself with this investor's money, and he buys these properties for them to flip. I like Alex Hormozi's advice of do so much volume that it's impossible for you to fail. But I definitely didn't want this video to be one of those alpha male hustle videos. I wanted it to be at least fairly practical. And yes, you could choose a high income skill and get rich faster than many people. But I wanted it to be practical for anybody. And I think if you follow these foundational pillars and you create a durable structure, a durable system that's designed for you to win, it will be a lot harder for you to fail, regardless of whatever route that you take in life. With that being said, I apologize for the delay. I know I'm slow with getting videos out. I'm going to try to be better with that. I might make a schedule. We'll see how I'm feeling. But I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, consider leaving a comment, consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. Good luck on your investing journey.